I do miss those guys up in the press box, Ron Lancaster and Don Whitman. We had a lot of fun. I know they miss me, especially taking that gin rummy money away from me every year, but there are compensating factors. You know, I'm back with the Argos. I really enjoy being with football, and especially with the Argos. I bleed double blue. We made some great acquisitions in the off-season. We're going to have a good football team. And right now, before the game starts, as the tape is on and the band is playing, I'm getting ready, and I hope the team is.
Well, with Leo Cahill in the general manager's chair, the Toronto Argonauts tonight live at CNE Stadium are ready to take on the Saskatchewan Roughriders. It's a warm, muggy evening in Toronto as the Argonauts, with a 2-1 record, prepare to take on the 1-2 Saskatchewan Roughriders. Hi, everybody. I'm Don Whitman with Chuck Healy. And, Chuck, a very important home-and-home series for the Argos and the Roughriders.
Definitely, Don. I think both teams want to win this game in regards to their positioning, but more important than that, both organizations would like to establish a winning tradition once again to get the fans back in the stadiums.
Well, the Saskatchewan Roughriders are hoping that they'll come up with a win tonight and have a lot of fans in the stands when they return home. Chuck, you had an opportunity to take a more analytical look at both teams, the Saskatchewan Roughriders and the Toronto Argonauts. And these two teams, over the course of the 1985 season, played twice, and the Toronto Argonauts won both games here at CNE and the final game of the season in Regina.
Will be the passing of quarterback Joe Powell to his core of receivers, especially number 81, sure-handed Ray Elgard. If the offense is to be successful, they will need some help from their running backs. Replacing injured Denny Ferdinand will be Bobby Johnson in his second year from San Jose State. And when you talk about injuries, you have to consider the status of Conridge Holloway, the 12-year veteran quarterback of the Toronto Argonauts, who has been playing injured all season long. I asked Conridge about his status before the game.
Well, I feel my status is more around the 80% range. I haven't practiced all week, and mainly because my mobility is not there yet. I've learned to tolerate the pain level, but I just can't run as well as I'd like to. And I think the way they're going to use me in this game will be in a backup capacity.
Knowing that Conridge Holloway will not be playing, the controls will fall in the hands of Norman Gibbs. Even though this is only his third start, he has been in the league for 3 years as a backup to Tom Clements and John Huffnagel of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. He has a strong arm and has the ability to break off a run. Individually, you want to look at some of the stars of the game. Look for Tim McRae, the running back of the Saskatchewan Roughriders, who can run and also catch passes coming out of the backfield. On defense, Eddie Lowe, at 5'11", 205 pounds, relies on his quickness more so than his size to get the job done at linebacker. And for the Toronto Argonauts, you look at Craig Ellis, an exciting running back who has special added emphasis to take place playing against his old team, the Saskatchewan Roughriders. And on defense, there's Carl Brazeley, the 7-year veteran who anchors a strong secondary. In 1985 season, he was not only their top defensive player, but was nominated for a Shinley Award as the outstanding player in Canada.
And Chuck, I think it's safe to say that some players will have a personal reason for playing well tonight. They were involved in trades between these two teams, the most recent, of course, being Willie Thomas and Craig Ellis coming to Toronto, with Nick Hebler and Greg Holmes going to Saskatchewan.
Well, those trades always have a way of making the player want to play harder against the team that traded him. I was traded, and I know exactly how they feel.
Well, on the Saskatchewan Roughrider roster, there are 3 ex-Toronto Argonauts, and there are 8 ex-Saskatchewan Roughriders now playing for Toronto. We're just about set for the opening kickoff, but first let's go to CFL Control and Don Martin.
All right, Don, thanks very much, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to CFL on CBC. It'll be an interesting matchup both on the individual and the team level tonight at Exhibition Stadium as the Argos meet the Riders in this first of a 2-game back-to-back series. Let's take a look at the standings as they begin play in Week 4. Ottawa and the Argos tied for the lead in the East, both playing tonight, both 2-1. In the West, the undefeated Edmonton Eskimos, the only team without a loss this season, lead the BC Lions. They are 2-1. Saskatchewan 1-2 going into tonight's game. They won 2 straight after starting 1-2 last year. And the scoring leaders after week 3, Tom Dixon, the man who took over from Dave Cutler in Edmonton, leads Lance Chomick of the Argos by 6 points. Chomick is 8 for 8 in field goals so far this season. Paul Osbaldison, 25 points. Trevor Kennard, last year's scoring champion, in there with 24. Coming up at halftime, a preview of the Ottawa-Edmonton game later tonight. Steve Armitage working that game along with Rand Lancaster. The stars of the week from week 3. We'll take a look at the CFL leaders in 6 different offensive and defensive categories. An update reeling up in week 4. Some interesting matchups. A couple of teams looking for their second wins of the season. Hamilton will be in Calgary tomorrow night. Then on Saturday, the Montreal Alouettes looking for their first win of the season in against the BC Lions, who are 2-1 so far. Okay, let's go back live to Exhibition Stadium.
Ontario Place in the background as the Toronto Argonauts and Saskatchewan Roughriders prepare to kick it off here at CNE Stadium in Toronto. And the Argonauts, winners of their first 2 against Hamilton and Montreal, losers last week 28-17 to the British Columbia Lions. The Saskatchewan Roughriders won their first game of the year with a triumph over the Calgary Stampeders 28-14. Then they were bombed 56-0 in Winnipeg on July the 5th, and they lost to Edmonton 31-19 last Saturday in Regina. The Toronto Argonauts will be kicking off. As Chuck mentioned, Norman Gibbs will draw his second starting assignment, replacing the injured Condredge Holloway. Although Holloway is dressed for tonight's ball game, it would require injuries to both Norman Gibbs and his backup, David Bates, for Holloway to get into the ball game. He is in uniform, but is going to be a spectator unless something drastic happens to the other 2. Hank Olisic is preparing to kick off. Michael Elarms and Jeff Patterson are back to receive. Actually, the Rough Riders have got Tim McRae back as well. They have dropped 3 people back in anticipation that Hank Olisic might not hit it all that deep. Now, they have moved Jeff Patterson up just a little, so it is McRae and Elarms who are deep. And the kickoff will bounce in front of McRae. He had a little
game going down at Exhibition Stadium, 4 points apart. The Argos and the Rough Riders. Coming up at halftime, we'll have a preview of the other game later tonight, Ottawa at Edmonton. Steve Armitage standing by. We'll have a look at the stars of the week from week 3. We'll also check the CFL statistical leaders from the different departments, and a look at national and regional news. We'll also check the baseball scoreboard as the All-Break ends, and we'll also have a look at the British Open. Saskatchewan Roughriders leading Toronto 11-7, and we'll be back with more of our halftime show right after this. It is halftime here in Toronto. The Saskatchewan Roughriders leading the Argonauts 11-7 as they head for the 3rd quarter. Later tonight, an East-West showdown as the first place Ottawa Roughriders, 2-1, try to become the first team to knock off Edmonton this year. The Eskimos trying to make it 4 in a row. Standing by with a preview, Steve Armitage and Ron Lancaster.
Don, tonight's game here at Commonwealth Stadium features the only undefeated team in the CFL at this point, the Edmonton Eskimos. And Ronnie, does that surprise you that the Eskimos are undefeated?
No, not really. I think coming into the season, the Eskimos wanted to make a run at the top spot. That means beat the best team. That's the BC Lions. They did that. So 3-0 doesn't really surprise me at this stage.
Last week when the Ottawa Roughriders were beaten by the Calgary Stampeders, Joe Moss said that he took the Stampeders too lightly. They weren't prepared. I've got a feeling they're going to be prepared for the Eskimos.
Well, they better be prepared for the Eskimos, and I really don't buy that they weren't prepared. I think sometimes you'll come up flat and things, but I don't really believe they went into the game not taking Calgary's strong, because you got to be ready to play every football game. But when you have that problem last week, you certainly will correct it this week, so they'll be ready for Edmonton.
Now, what do they have to do to beat the Eskimos?
Keep their offense on the field. Don't allow Edmonton's offense to get it because they've had success. They have got to put the points on the board and make first downs.
So it's the leaders in the CFL, the Ottawa Roughriders at 2-1, sharing the lead with the Argos against the CFL's only undefeated team, the Eskimos, at 3-0. And now back to CFL Control and Don Martin. Don?
All right, thanks, Steve. Should be a great one coming up in just over 35 minutes' time. All right, week 3 was a big one. Both Calgary and Hamilton won their first games of the season, and both check in with the CFL Stars of the Week. Let's have a look. The Hamilton Tiger Cats' strong performance against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers was led by 2 Stars of the Week award winners. Defensive honors go to Hamilton's number 20, Mark Streeter. The third-year defensive back picked off 3 passes, added a quarterback sack, and contributed 5 tackles in a hard-fought 28-11 victory. Ticat defensive tackle number 61, Mike Walker, wins the lineman star. He picked up a fumble, added 3 tackles, and a sack as the Hamilton defense shot down the high-flying Bombers. Earning the offensive star, Calgary's number 23, Gary Allen, playing in his first CFL game. The Stampeder running back picked up 116 yards on 22 carries and added 50 more yards on 2 receptions in Calgary's 31-15 win over Ottawa. Streeter, Walker, and Allen, the stars of Week 3 in the CFL. So both Hamilton and Calgary, ironically enough, have all the stars of the week, and they both have modest 1-game winning streaks, which will come to an end tomorrow for at least one of the teams as they meet tomorrow night in Calgary. All right, let's take a look at the statistical leaders through the first 3 weeks of this CFL season. The leading scorer is a kicker, Tom Dixon from the Edmonton Eskimos. 34 points on 9 converts, 6 field goals, and 7 singles. He has a 6-point lead on Lance Chomick of Toronto. The leading rusher, Ken Hobart, the Hamilton quarterback. He's already carried 35 times for 258 yards and 3 touchdowns, after setting the CFL record for quarterback rushing last year. The leading pass receiver from Winnipeg, James Murphy, leading in receptions with 31, leading in yards with 481. Murphy's quickly making them forget Jeff Boyd. Murphy has also added 3 touchdowns. Ned Armour of BC is well back, 113 yards behind. In passing, it's the surprising Rick Johnson, the quarterback of the Calgary Stampeders, leading the league in completions and yards, 65 for 821. 6 touchdown passes is also the most in the CFL for Rick Johnson. Defensively, Mark Streeter leads in interceptions with 5, including 3 last week against Winnipeg. 98 yards in total returns, the longest 34 yards plus a touchdown for Mark Streeter. And in punt returns, Argo rookie Chris Woods is the leader, 14 of them for 229 yards and an impressive 16.4-yard average. Chris Woods leading the league in CFL punt returns. And the story on Chris Woods continues. One of those punt returns was 74 yards. That was the longest by an Argo in almost 6 seasons. Also tonight, Lance Chomick has gone 2 for 2 in field goals, so he has moved into a tie. He's actually the leader now in CFL scoring, but it is still early in Week 4, and Tom Dixon will have lots of time to catch up. Let's have a look at the British Open scoreboard at Exhibition Stadium in Toronto. As you may well know, the Molson Indy will be run possible. The Stars of 85.
The best of the best in 1985. This man, number 24, Swervin Mervyn Fernandez, winner of the Shenley Award as Outstanding Player in the Canadian Football League. This was one of Mervyn's 95 receptions for a league-leading 1,700 yards. Rugged Winnipeg tackle Nick Mastaya, the Shenley Outstanding Offensive Lineman. While teammate Tyrone Jones was Defensive Player of the Year with smashing plays like this. British Columbia defensive tackle Mike Gray making his presence known as Shenley Rookie of the Year. The People's Choice veteran Paul Bennett did his Tiger Cats proud as Canadian Player of the Year. Here, he uses this 99-yard punt return to add to his career record total of punt return yardage. He is also number 1 in career yardage for interception returns. Bennett has definitely found a home in Hamilton after being cast aside by several other teams. And how about Don Matthews for leading the Lions to the Grey Cup, 85, Coach of the Year. Now the league leaders in 85, Winnipeg kicker Trevor Kennard leading all scorers with a single-season record 198 points. He kicked in with 43 field goals in leading the league's most potent offense. Kennard's teammate, the classy Willard Reeves, the 84 Shenley Player of the Year, the league's leading rusher, the only ball carrier to go over 1,000 yards. He had 1,300. Once again, the most feared connection in all the CFL, top-ranked quarterback Roy DeWalt, hooking up with the most valuable player, Merv Fernandez. Now, DeWalt threw for more than 4,200 yards, connecting for 27 touchdown passes, 15 of those to Mervyn Fernandez. The CFL's Mr. Everything, Saskatchewan's Craig Ellis, he led the league in pass receptions with 102. Ellis led the league in touchdowns, 17, including 14 rushing. Craig Ellis will be wearing Argonaut blue for Toronto in '86. And finally, let's have a look at the longest play from scrimmage in 1985. Veteran Winnipeg quarterback Tom Clements out of Notre Dame to Jeff Boyd. It is a 105-yard touchdown. Yes, sir. The fans love it. And why not? They've just seen the best in the CFL.
All right, thanks, Brian. Wish you were here. There's a power failure at CNE's Exhibition Stadium, but we'll continue with CFL on CBC when we return right after these messages. Toronto 7 and power no score down at Exhibition Stadium. The lights are off. They are not playing football. You won't miss a thing. We'll get back to the game as soon as it resumes, and we expect that delay to run for a while. So score 11-6 for the Saskatchewan Roughriders, and there is a power failure underway down at Exhibition Stadium. Trivia note, in 1930, they said at the time it would never work. I guess they were right. The power is off. They are not playing football. As soon as they do resume play, we will go back there. But in the meantime, they're just about 15 minutes away from kickoff out in Edmonton's Commonwealth Stadium, where the Ottawa Roughriders are standing by, and so is Steve Armitage and Ron Lancaster.
Here in Commonwealth Stadium in Edmonton tonight, it's the battle of the leaders in the CFL. The Edmonton Eskimos with a record of 3-0, leading the West against the Ottawa Roughriders, leaders in the East, co-leaders in the East with a record of 2-1. Ronnie Lancaster, are you surprised that the Eskimos are 3-0 at this stage in the season?
Well, not really. I just look back to last year. When the season ended, the Eskimos felt that they had a team that was ready to challenge for the top. Well, they did that. They met the BC Lions, who supposedly were the best team coming into the '86 season, and they give them a pretty good whipping right here in Commonwealth Stadium. I think that was the biggest game of the three for them, even though they eked out that one in Calgary. But the one they had to be shooting for was the BC Lions. They got them, so no, it doesn't surprise me.
Joe Moss said last week that one of the problems against Calgary was the fact that the Ottawa Roughriders may have taken them too lightly. I guarantee you one thing, they will not take the Eskimos lightly.
I never buy that business of taking a team lightly. You know, you are responsible to get ready to play X number of games in the season. In this case, it's 18 games this year. Every time you walk on the football field, you can win it or you can lose it. So it's your job to get ready. If they did take them lightly, they certainly will be ready to play tonight, or they better be.
One of the things that head coach Joe Moss wants from the Rough Riders tonight is a more consistent offense against a very tough Eskimo defense.
You're right. That Eskimo defense is really strong, but when you look at it from an Ottawa viewpoint, they have got to control the football. That means cut down turnovers, make first downs, and put points on the board. When you can control the tempo of a football game with your offense, the odds really go up for winning.
One of the things that Joe Moss will not hesitate to do in this game tonight is go to his bench for backup and maybe even a third quarterback if J.C. Watts can't get the job done.
Well, you know, you got to feel a little sorry for J.C. Watts. He had 8 quarterbacks to compete with in training camp, so you know, you have to get the picture right away when you report that maybe they're not happy with you. He catches criticism everywhere he goes. He may enjoy playing on the road, and let's face it, I still believe that J.C. Watts is a good athlete and he can get the job done. But as you say, if he's not, we're going to see Tom Burgess, the rookie from Colgate, and we're going to see Gil Renfro, who's the third quarterback, because Joe Moss is going to find a quarterback that can execute this run-and-shoot offense before this season's over.
For some reason, that run-and-shoot offense has been sputtering a little of late.
Well, the run and shoot is a pass-oriented offense. A quarterback has to be able to come out, 3 steps, bang, throw the football. J.C. Watts came from a program in college where throwing the football is never heard of. It's a running offense. He needs to get some experience at it. Hopefully, for his sake, it'll be tonight.
Very quickly, are the Eskimos going to go to 4-0?
I would think so, and just for the reason we're talking about. I don't know if the Ottawa offense is consistent enough to beat a real good defense.
It's the showdown of the leaders here at Commonwealth Stadium in Edmonton. It's the Eskimos 3-0 against the Ottawa Roughriders with a 2-1 mark. And now back to CFL Control and Don Martin.
All right, thanks, Steve. The lights are still on here, but they are still off down at Exhibition Stadium in Toronto, where the Saskatchewan Roughriders lead the Argonauts 11-7 in the first half as they get set to start the third quarter, which has now been delayed by about 20 minutes by that power failure. I realize it's a nice warm summer evening in many parts of the country. Maybe you were out doing some gardening earlier tonight. You missed the first half of the game, so let's go back and pick it up. Don Whitman and Chuck Ely describing it from the opening kickoff tonight.
To kick off, Mike's banks of lights on the south side of the stadium, but basically the field is in darkness and there is no way they could play a football game. And Chuck Ely, the Saskatchewan Roughriders and the Toronto Argonauts return to the field, ready to start the second half. Now they have gone through their warm-up calisthenics once again.
Well, this is a tough situation for the teams in regards to getting warm. I mean, you go inside and you're trying to prepare for it to come back on the field, mentally be prepared, but also now you have to come back out and physically get ready again. So it's important for them to get warm and get loose and try to stay loose as the game goes on.
Well, the stretching exercises, trying to keep those muscles loose, not to get too taut. This is, of course, the situation where muscle injuries could occur. You know, when Leo Cahill left the broadcast booth to take over as general manager of the Toronto Argonauts, he knew it was going to be tough, but I don't think he anticipated it being quite this rough in his first year.
Well, I think if anybody can flex and do something in the dark, it will be Leo Cahill. So I'm sure he'll adjust to the situation. Just wonder if the players are going to be able to adjust now, as we said, talking about their mental attitude towards the game and their physical thing. Because what happens is you get cold and you want to stretch and you want to get those muscles back because they're still warm if you go in for halftime for about 12 or 15 minutes. But when you come back out, everything gets stiff again, so you got to start all over.
I wonder if any of them have clauses in their contract that provide overtime pay in the event that a football game runs much longer than the normal 3 hours.
I'm sure they would like to get this one over with, and rather than take the chance of playing it all over again or whatever the situation may be down the line if they don't get this game in.
Well, the power problem involves the hydro line that supplies the entire CNE stadium and grounds, and it is the line that runs into this area that has caused the blackout at CNE Stadium itself. Now, power, as you can see, has been restored to some of the facility. The scoreboard is lit up and parts of the stands are now bathed in light as the mercury vapor lamps are coming on one at a time, but still not adequate light for us to continue with this football game. Of course, during that power outage, our trucks were also deprived of an adequate electrical supply to provide you with pictures here from CNE Stadium. Now, as you see, the lights, some of them are on, some of them are off, and it takes time for those lights to warm up once they are turned on. So we are still several minutes away from this game actually starting. Now, there is an emergency power supply that provides electricity and light to the press box area, but our power in the mobile units located underneath the stands was knocked out, and as a result we were unable to provide any pictures from this area during halftime. Now, many of the fans in the stands thought that perhaps they could continue as there was still rather adequate daylight when they returned to start the second half. But Don Barker, who is the supervisor of officials, met with the general managers of both teams, and they decided it would be total light or nothing, and that's the situation we're in right now.
Well, I think that's a safe call. I think you don't want to do anything to maybe cause an unnecessary injury because of darkness. As you said, there was some light, and there was a little bit of light that they could possibly start and take advantage of that light. But still, as it got darker and darker, you don't want to take a chance on any type of injury to one of the players out there.
Well, the Saskatchewan Roughriders must be wondering if the gods are conspiring against them, because this is the second time that the Roughriders have been involved in a power failure. Once at home a couple of years ago at Taylor Field in Regina. I think it was something like an hour and 10 minutes before power was restored there in a contest they were playing against the Ottawa Roughriders. But our confrere John Wells, who was handling the telecast at the time, did a remarkable job of providing viewers with a description of what was taking place during the time that there was no power at Taylor Field in Regina. And gradually things are getting better. The situation is improving here at CNE Stadium, and the players continuing to warm up, trying to stay loose in anticipation of this second half getting underway. There's Don Barker, and he has been conferring with Ken Lazaruk, who is the referee in charge of tonight's game. And I think we're almost at the point where they could again commence play. Well, Jack Gotta is down on the sidelines. Jocko, an unusual situation. You would have been quite happy for the game to end at this juncture, leading by 4 points.
I made that suggestion to the referee. You know, I just said, let's just take the deuce and get out of town, you know. But anyway, we've been stoking up on carrots the last little bit, and it should help us the last 30 minutes. But it'll be a good football game in the second half.
Jocko, what can you do but retain a sense of humor during the power outage? The Saskatchewan Roughriders had a problem a couple of years ago at Taylor Field in Regina, a similar incident.
Yeah, but I think that we got this thing remedied now, and we got to get cranked up for the second half. Anything can happen in football, certainly in Canadian football. Thank you, Don.
I know you're anxious to get back to your troops. Thanks for chatting with us. Jack Gotta, the head coach of the Saskatchewan Roughriders. His team leads by a score of 11-7. And now the players are moving out onto the field. All the scoring, the result of the field goal prowess of Lance Chomick, who has hit 2 for the Toronto Argonauts. And Hank Lissick added a single. 3 field goals by Dave Ridgway of the Roughriders. Nick Hebler responsible for a safety touch. 11-7, and we're about ready to start the second half of the ball game. Tonight, the lights went out at CNE Stadium. Well, the Saskatchewan Roughriders are going to kick off, and a reminder to all of our sponsors along the CBC network, the next commercial position will be number 12. So all coordinators, we alert you to that. The next commercial position, number 12.
He leads his Alouettes into the Dome against the always explosive BC Lions, especially this combination, DeWalt to Ned Armour. CFL action Saturday on CBC, Montreal at BC at 10 Eastern.
Montreal came from the end position. They took him back into the end zone, but the referee, Ken Lazaruk, rules that the sack was made at the 2-yard line.
Well, Norman Gibbs was running a bootleg fake to the right side, and Nick Hebler just beats Bronk and makes the sack.
Concede 2 points. The Toronto Argonauts will concede a safety touch with 9:08 remaining in this third quarter. The Roughriders move in front 13-7, and Toronto will be forced to kick off. CFL control.
In Edmonton, the Eskimos have taken the early lead. Ken Clark for Ottawa, back to punt, deep in his own territory. Watch number 19 come from the outside. It's Gary Thompson. He gets the block all the way across the field, where Danny Bass picks it up about the 20-yard line. Bass fighting his way into the end zone, and the Eskimos are on top early, less than 5 minutes in. They lead Ottawa 7-0. Let's return to Exhibition Stadium.
Martin.
In Edmonton, the Riders have tied it up. A fumbled punt leads to the touchdown. J.C. Watts 10 yards to his favorite receiver. Mark Barus is in the end zone. He makes the completion. The touchdown is good. So is the convert. It's 7-7 in the first quarter at Commonwealth Stadium. Now let's return to Exhibition Stadium in Toronto.
Well, turnovers playing, obviously, a key role in that game at Commonwealth Stadium. Talking about turnovers, I think Cal Murphy is still having nightmares about the performance of his Winnipeg Blue Bombers on Saturday night at Iverwin Stadium in Hamilton when they lost to the Ticats. 11 times they gave the ball away.
Well, you just can't do that in this game regardless of who you're playing. With Winnipeg, with all the talent they have, they shouldn't make that type of mistake, or that many for that matter, to give another team the opportunity to beat them.
The stadium in Toronto, the two squads have been able to generate only 260 yards in total offense. The Rough Riders enjoying the edge, 155 to 95, and something a little unusual in this defensive struggle, a couple of safety touches. You can go quite a stretch in many CFL encounters without seeing even one.
Yeah, and one of them was more of a defensive ploy rather than an offensive ploy. And I think, like you said, it's a defensive game, not much offense, and hopefully something will happen this next quarter to get some touchdowns on the board.
Well, both coaches have made quarterbacking changes, as David Bates has replaced Norman Gibbs for Toronto, and Harold Smith took over from Joe Paupau for Saskatchewan.
He throws it over the linebacker low, deep into the secondary before he takes the hit.
From another angle.
As you take another look, Glenn Suter is coming in to make the contact and hits Cox at that point.
Well, attempt to maintain a perfect record in the field goal department. And he does. 11 for 11. 6:48 is the time left to play here at CNE Stadium in Toronto as the Argos trail by 3. Mates?
Well, as you see, Harold Smith drops back here and just throws the ball down deep and hopes that he can hit the receiver. And Marcellus Green is there to pick off the interception. And Harding helps out that play by forcing the quarterback to really throw it before his feet were planted.
Now, Harding must have said something. As a matter of fact, he eased up. He must have said something to Harold Smith after he saw that it was intercepted that Smith didn't like. The pass was in.
We're in the second quarter in Edmonton. The Eskimos, Matt Dunnigan, back to pass. He'll go over the middle and find Milson Jones some 25 yards away. 17-7 Edmonton over Ottawa in the second quarter. We're still waiting for our first touchdown in Toronto, so let's return to Exhibition Stadium.
Well, Jack Gotta would not care if his team didn't score a touchdown as long as they were able to hang on to this 3-point lead. And with actually the call, we're informed now.
Well, I tell you, you can't afford that type of error, and you could bet Bob Obilovich will be talking to somebody on the sidelines about that mistake.
Baby! Come on, Scully! Come on, Roger!
And Johnson has another Saskatchewan first down to the 24-yard line. Stopped by Jerry Nash.
That's the type of running play we expected them to have earlier in the game. But now they're coming on with the late in the game. As you see here, this is just a quick opener to the right. And he just runs over people and picks up another first down for the Saskatchewan Roughriders.
10 carries for 53 yards for Bobby Johnson. First and 10 from the 24. Johnson again, big hole. Look out, he's gone. And with 2:08 remaining, that will put it away for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. A 24-yard run for the touchdown.
Just another good running play. They've run the same play 3 times in a row, and the Toronto Argonauts defense are beginning to move and come up tight. And once he breaks loose into the secondary, he runs away from Jerry Nash and takes it right into the end zone for the touchdown.
Ridgway with the point after, and he puts it through. Well, the Saskatchewan Roughriders, aided by a very costly penalty, too many men on the field on a third down punt, and then some fine running. 3 consecutive carries by Bobby Johnson have really taken control and have pretty much put this one away.
Well, we were looking for a touchdown all game, and here we go with it with Bobby Johnson running again. We knew they had some good running backs. They just had to have a little room, and Bobby Johnson, as you see here, has the speed and the ability to take it a long way.
21-11 the score now. Johnson, who debuted with 116 yards against the Calgary Stampeders, did not dress for the last game against the Edmonton Eskimos, but certainly came back flying in the late stages of this game to assure the Roughriders a victory. Game star from the Saskatchewan Roughriders on the strength mainly of a touchdown drive in the fourth quarter, Bobby Johnson.
Well, that time on that pass play, Glenn Suter got back there and was able to stop him. As you look here, Eddie Walker was beaten, and he grabs Pearson by the jersey. One of the things that the officials sometimes miss.
Lance Chomick will. It is good. With 1:15 remaining, 21-14 the score. The Saskatchewan Roughriders will scrimmage, it would appear, at the 35-yard line rather than have the Toronto Argonauts kick off, but that is now 12 for 12, a perfect mark for Lance Chomick of the Toronto Argonauts. That was set up by that 57-yard reception by Jeff Townsend. Well, just when Jack Goda thought that his troops were home and cooled out, suddenly they may have a few problems. Bobby Johnson will help solve some of those problems with another first down. And let's go to Don Martin at CFL Control.
In Edmonton, an Eskimo turnover leads to a Reggie Butt touchdown for Ottawa. J.C. Watts finds him wide open in the end zone. It's a 6-yard pass, capping a 3-play drive that goes 26 yards. Second touchdown of the season for Reggie Butts. It's now 17-14 Edmonton over Ottawa. Let's return to Exhibition Stadium.
14 yards for Bobby Johnson. Eddie Lowe preserves the Saskatchewan victory with the interception, taking the ball down to the 23-yard line.
Okay, we talked about Eddie Lowe's quickness. As he's dropping back, he's just reading the quarterback, and the quarterback doesn't seem as he throws a pattern into the middle, and Eddie Lowe picks it off.
Eddie Lowe moved into that middle linebacking position because of the injury to Gary Moten, and he comes through with the interception in the final seconds and gives Saskatchewan a first down at the Toronto 23-yard line, and that will enable the Rough Riders to return home with a record of 2 wins and 2 losses. The clock does not start, of course, until the ball is snapped on the change of possession. Just 6 seconds remaining, and Bob Obilovich and Ellis Rainsberger can only shake their heads. Well, before he made that game-saving interception, Eddie Lowe had been a standout defensively for Saskatchewan and is our Carling O'Keefe defensive game star. And that's the ball game as the Saskatchewan Rough Riders defeat the Toronto Argonauts 21-14. Now we say goodnight to our viewers in Saskatchewan who are joining the Ottawa and Edmonton game, with a reminder that our next telecast is this Saturday from Vancouver when the BC Lions host the Montreal Alouettes. Well, at CNE Stadium, the Toronto Argonauts losing 21-14 to the Saskatchewan Rough Riders. The Rough Riders getting a touchdown in the 4th quarter from Bobby Johnson to put it away, and Johnson had a good ball game as he ran for 91 yards, Chuck.
Well, as we went to the latter part of the game, the Saskatchewan Rough Riders got their running game going a little better, and unfortunately for them, it was late in the game, but it came up with a big touchdown that they needed to salt the game away.
So the Saskatchewan Rough Riders return home with a record of 2 wins and 2 losses. 247 yards in offense tonight at CNE Stadium as the Toronto Argonauts turned the ball over on 3 occasions. The Argo offense sputtered, whether it was Norman Gibbs or David Bates. Much of that yardage total accrued late in the game on a 57-yard pass to Jeff Townsend.
Well, regardless of whoever else is in there, without Conridge Holloway, that Toronto Argonaut offense has its problems. They've got 2 young quarterbacks who may be capable in the future, but right now they are not able to do the job, and they still want to rely on Conridge Holloway. We'll have to see how his knee is going to be in the next game against Saskatchewan.
And the Toronto Argonauts now with a record of 2 wins and 2 losses, both losses to Western teams, BC last week and the Saskatchewan Rough Riders tonight. Jack Gata talking to Bob Obilovich as the 2 coaches exchange words at midfield. Our next telecast will be Saturday night when the Montreal Alouettes visit the BC Lions. Once again, the final score, 21-14 Saskatchewan.
Toronto 14, and in the 4th quarter, Ottawa trails Edmonton 37-21. That's it.
BC Place Stadium, the Lions had their hands full with Toronto. Before BC could chalk up their second win of the young season, the Argos forced the Lions to score 25 points in only 30 minutes. It was BC's big play that did the trick in a 28-17 victory. It was Lion offensive power at its most explosive. Tonight, under the dome, just a punt from Expo 86. Another challenger from the East will test the Grey Cup champions. It's the Alouettes against the Lions. You're looking at live pictures of BC Place Stadium, where tonight the BC Lions entertain the Montreal Alouettes. Hi everyone, and welcome to Vancouver, where tonight the BC Lions will try to keep pace with the undefeated leaders in the CFL's Western Division, the Edmonton Eskimos. Last week here at BC Place Stadium, the BC Lions came out flat in the first half and almost paid the ultimate price against the Argos. Ron Lancaster, tonight I don't think the BC Lions can take the Montreal Alouettes lightly, despite the Als' 0-2 record.
Anytime you go on a football field, you can lose. And I'm sure the BC Lions have been reminded of that all week. Montreal might be 0-2, but for credibility, there's nothing better than knocking off the Grey Cup champions. Now, in order to do that, they're going to have to overcome some big problems of their own. And that is on the defensive side of the football. They're going to have to get a tremendous pass rush out of that front four because they like to play a lot of zone defense, which means they're only going to rush four. But in the secondary, they have got all new people. And what I mean by new people, some of them have experience in the CFL, but none of them were starters last year with Montreal. That'll create a lot of problems for a young football team. And when you say young, there's nothing Roy DeWalt likes better than inexperience in the secondary. The BC Lions have been a big play offense for many, many years. There's no reason for them to change that tonight. Over the years, Mervyn Fernandez has been their big play man, but now it's Ned Armour. And we know what Ned Armour can do. He showed last year in the final games of the season and the playoffs in Grey Cup when Fernandez went down, and last week averaged 27 yards every time he touched the football. So they will get a test from that BC Lion offense.
One of the most successful quarterbacks here in BC Place Stadium against the BC Lions has been a man by the name of Joe Barnes, but he's not starting tonight.
No, and you know, I think back to last year when Joe was with Calgary, and he came in here and nobody gave him a chance to win, and he comes in here and just blew the BC Lions right out of the stadium. But tonight it's Brian Ransom gets his opportunity to start. He is a big, big quarterback at 6'4" and about 220 pounds. Gary Thurchik talked about him yesterday at the press conference as having a very, very strong arm, and he's very mobile, and that's what they feel they need against the BC Lions. So we'll see what happens tonight when we get to Brian Ransom and how he faces that BC Lion defense.
In Edmonton, the BC Lions suffered what many of their fans thought would be a crippling injury when Merv Fernandez went down and fractured his little finger. But replacing Merv Fernandez is a player by the name of Jim Sandusky, and he has done a pretty good job.
He's not a bad football player to have just hanging around. You know, last year he was a starter. This year he failed the medical at training camp, but as luck would have it, I guess, when Fernandez gets injured, Sandusky got healthy at the right time. Last week against the Argonauts, 6 receptions, averaged about 20 yards every time he caught it, and that was his first time out. Now, we look at defense with the BC Lions. We have known for years, very, very tough to run against the BC Lions. Their defense is usually up near the top in quarterback sacks. This year, they have a new leader, and that's Rick Klassen. And Rick has, in his 6th year, been overshadowed by guys like Michael Gray, James Parker, Nick Hepler last year. But this year, he may be off to the best start he's had in his career. I think finally, he's being recognized as one of the better defensive linemen in the league.
I know one of the things that head coach Don Matthews wants from the Lions offense tonight is a great deal more consistency.
Well, I know Coach Matthews is like all other coaches. He doesn't really feel they've arrived offensively. And when he says consistency, he means make first downs, score points, keep the defense off the field. The other team cannot beat you as long as you maintain control of the football. Roy DeWalt and those guys we said are big play men. He wants to see him use up the time, eat up the yardage, still score points.
Okay, Ronnie, some good news for the BC Lions and their fans. Hunter place kicker Louis Pasaglia, who has been out of the lineup with pulled stomach muscles, will be back in the lineup tonight. The opening kickoff and the national anthem are coming up next. Stay with us. Welcome back to BC Place Stadium in Vancouver, where the weather outside is perfect, and as always, in Canada's only dome stadium, the weather inside is absolutely perfect, as we look at quarterback Roy DeWalt warm up for the BC Lions. And now with our national anthem, Here's Richard Loney. Chuck Ely and I will have that game for you. Calgary's at Winnipeg. Ronnie will be in Winnipeg with Bob Picken. And then on Friday, July 25th, the Lions are in Hamilton against the Ticats. And on Saturday, Toronto travel to Taylor Field to take on the Saskatchewan Roughriders.
There's Paul Nastasiak. We talked about him making that tackle. He was that #1 draft choice we were saying. He was coming into camp as a slot back. The priorities of the Lions were they needed another Canadian slot. He came in as a slot, and luck would have it again in his case. Ryan Potter with a broken hand couldn't practice. They put him back to his running back spot, and he looks like he's got it because I think they let him go last week, and he does a great job on the special teams.
There's Joe Barnes, the backup quarterback for the Montreal Alouettes tonight. 1st and 10 for the Owls.
Television.
And welcome back to BC Place Stadium in Vancouver, where it's halftime in the game between the Montreal Alouettes and the BC Lions. The BC Lions went into the dressing room with a 4-point lead, 14-10. Right now, let's look at the statistics in that first half of play. And as you will see, it favors the BC Lions. Net offense 192 to 160 for the Montreal Alouettes. But statistically, one of the big stories for the Alouettes in the first half of play was the quarterbacking of Brian Ransom, and his favorite target was James Hood, the 6'1", 175-pounder out of Arizona State. Had 7 receptions for 97 yards and an average of 13.8 yards per reception for the Montreal Alouettes. So Coach Durkic of the Alouettes was worried about his offense going into this game. He certainly got some offensive production in that first half. We'll be back with the second half kickoff in just a moment. Fans here at BC Place Stadium tonight enjoying a very entertaining game, and I'm not so sure that too many of those fans thought they would be too entertained tonight.
Well, I think BC were pretty confident coming in. I know the fans here were before the game, but only 2 touchdowns. We're going to take a look at Montreal's touchdown. Keevan Jenkins is going to take this in right behind the blocking of Glenn Leonard. You'll see Carinci blocked to the outside. Right behind Glenn Leonard, he falls across the line. No problem. Now, finally, the other touchdown, Montreal, number 34, Alan Reed. He gets in on the right side behind Trevor Bowles, and he gets in. That's really been the entire offense. They've moved the ball up and down the field, but they haven't put it in the end zone, and that's a big plus for Montreal because we said going in they would be tested in the secondary. The first half, they've met the challenge.
Now, the BC Lions came out flat against the Toronto Argonauts in the first half of the last game. They went into the dressing room, and whatever it was that Don Matthews said to the BC Lions, it certainly must have worked because they came out fired up.
Well, I'm sure whatever he said last week, he's going to repeat it this week because they need to get those big plays. Montreal, we said, are going to play a lot of zone defense, sit back, force the BC Lions to beat them, not give it to them.
Keevan Jenkins and Darnell Clash are back deep to receive this kickoff from the Montreal Alouettes. Lions in front by 4, 14-10. BC hoping to improve their record to 3-1. Montreal looking for their first win of the young CFL season. Going into this game 0-2. On CBC television, we'll have 2 games. Viewers in the East will see the Montreal Alouettes at Lansdowne Park against the Rough Riders. In the West, they'll see the Stampeders in Winnipeg against the Blue Bombers. I will be at Lansdowne Park with Chuck Ely, and Ron Lancaster will get a chance to work with Bob Picken in Winnipeg.
Breaks to the deep part of the end zone. Now watch this ball. It looks like it's right in his hands, but watch what happens. He doesn't have control of that football yet. And when he finally got control of it, he was out of bounds, and that's what the referee signaled. Good call.
Well, that's going to bring on you-know-who, Louis Pasaglia, to attempt a field goal. 3:06 remaining to play in the game. It's Montreal 20, BC 17.
Well, you hear a lot of noise at BC Place. They showed a replay up on the screen, but take a look at this. They're booing, but by the time Pankratz got control of that football, he was on the white line and out of bounds. So he didn't catch that. I don't care how many people boo. That's a great call. Took a lot of guts to make it, but he's right.
And the fans are not happy here at BC Place Stadium. really didn't help matters any. And now the Lions are calling for quiet as Louis Pasaglia will attempt this field goal from the 26-yard line. It's good! We're tied once again. The BC Lions 20, Montreal 20.
Well, I believe it was James Parker coming from the outside all the way around, just stripped the ball right out of Ransom's hand as he was looking downfield. Well, when you need the big plays, and that's what Parker usually does for you.
James Quick Parker, the man of the moment for the BC Lions.
Well, we're going to see it coming from the left side of your screen. Just as Ransom puts that ball out there, watch. Parker strips it. And the BC Lions are now on the 18-yard line.
Touchdown!
Well, Corinci just run right out in the flat. The wall hit him perfect. Now Corinци's going to dive for the end zone, right in. He got in. One more look.
The convert attempt from Louis Pasaglia is good. And the BC Lions go in front with 2 minutes and 6 seconds remaining to play in the fourth quarter.
Well, that's we said BC Lions are a big play offense. The biggest play they've got tonight was from James Parker. That may be the difference between a win, a loss, or a tie, or whatever, but that is a big, big play, and the BC Lions put it right in the end zone right away. That man, Jan Corinci, scored the touchdown.
Is Brett Williams of the Montreal Alouettes. He'll receive a Royal Canadian Mint 1-ounce gold coin presented by the Nikon One Touch, the simplest Nikon 35mm ever. The Toaster.
He's played well. He really has. I know that James Parker made the big play for the Lions, but I think on a 60-minute basis, Brett Williams has done just about everything.
Offensively and defensively, but we pick him as the Connie O'Keefe game star defensively.
It was a
James Hood with a great catch for the Montreal Alouettes.
That was a great catch because there was good coverage on him. This time he was able to get that ball in there, and Darnell Clash went right over his back. But that was an excellent catch. Watch it. Well, in those kind, Nelson Martin, I guess it was. You would think sometimes that ball would fall incomplete, but boy, that was a great catch.
A 31-yard pickup on the play. 1st and 10 Alouettes. And they complete it again to Hood. But he's short of the first down.
Well, still got a minute and 30 seconds left. He doesn't have to be in too big a hurry. They're going to give you that one-on-one outside. Stand up and take it. See if he takes it again.
2nd and 4.
Going to change it up on him. Give him a zone.
Swings it out. It's incomplete. Intended for Tony Johns. And Johns unable to hang on. Remember, they need the touchdown. They trail by 7 points.
We're going to find out now, aren't we? 3rd down and about 3.
The moment of truth for this young Montreal Alouette team who have entertained us royally here at BC Place Stadium tonight.
I think if we see man coverage outside, we're going to see that quick out. They give him that zone, he's going to have to dump it in the middle of one of those backs.
They roll it complete. Good call, good execution. A pass over the middle to Reed. And it gives them the first down. They keep the drive alive.
And he still doesn't have to hurry. He still has a minute and 21 seconds left. Take your time.
Puts it up.
Watch out. Watch out.
It's intercepted. Nelson Martin coming up with a big interception for the BC Lions.
Looking at Lou, it's 15 points on the night. So he came back at the right time. His points were needed.
They trailed 27-20. Ransom under pressure gets the pass away, but it's incomplete. Good defensive effort on the part of Keith Gooch. Ransom just floats it up, and it's knocked away by Darnell Clash. It was that Nelson Martin, I believe, got a hand on it and knocked it down. Mel Bird was covering on the play. That one was hung out to dry.
They're sitting in that two-man deep. They got Larry Crawford on one side and Nelson Martin on the other, and they're sitting at about 25 yards deep, so he didn't have to go too far.
It got hung up there in the dead air.
And the dead air knocked it down. Is that it?
Convinced of that. And I'm sure that Brian Ransom is also convinced of that. What a night he's had. 48 attempts, 26 completions, 294 yards. Unfortunately for the Alouettes and Brian Ransom, 2 interceptions. But he has had a strong game. He has impressed me.
Throwing the football. He's thrown it well for his first chance to start. James Hood has had a big night for Montreal. He'd like to have about 3 more completions in this last 24 seconds. They got a timeout called. He's over getting final instructions. I mean, right now it's 3rd and 10. He's got to get 10 yards, hopefully, and then get time to throw a couple of the end zone and see what happens.
And they need 7 points. They trail 27-20. And as Ronnie pointed out, only 24 seconds now showing on the scoreboard clock here at BC Place Stadium. Well, what do you call here, Coach?
Well, I got a feeling they're going to be in that zone again. I try to get somebody behind Clash or Gooch on the sidelines and somebody right up the middle, because I think they're going to be in that zone again. And that's what it looks like.
And that was over the head of the intended receiver, Kerry Taylor, well over the head. But again, in defense of Ransom, he was getting great pressure.
Well, that front four of BC's can put pressure on you at the best of times, and you know, they know also, 3rd down, last chance, let's go, because if we shut this one down, we're finished for the evening. And they know they're done. They're a pretty happy bunch. Absolutely. And the BC Lions 3-1 and stay in the hunt for first place in the CFL's Western Division. Roy DeWalt just drops to one knee. Lions have defeated the Montreal Alouettes by a score of 27-20, and there weren't many, including myself and Ron Lancaster, who thought this game would be as close as it was. It was a good football game. You have to be impressed with Montreal. They gave it a good effort tonight, come up 7 short. No big deal.
So the final score once again here at BC Place Stadium in Vancouver sees the BC Lions go to 3-1 on the season with a 27-20 victory over Montreal. The Alouettes go back to Montreal, still looking for their first win in the 1986 CFL season.
I think they made great strides tonight. You know, when they come into the Dome, have to play against a pretty darn tough football team. Played them almost to a standstill, had the opportunity to win it, and all of a sudden a big play by Parker. But the strides they make tonight, confidence-wise, is going to help them the rest of the year.
And if you're Don Matthews, you've still got to be just a little bit concerned about the lackluster performance of the defending Grey Cup champions, although full marks to Montreal.
Yeah, the big thing about it is never worry about it when you win. You're going to be concerned, but it's not a critical issue. A good football team wins close games, and they did.
Okay, let's take a look at the final touchdown of this game here tonight. It was Roy DeWalt rolling out to his right. He spotted Jan Carinci at the 10-yard line. Carinci just turned it on, managed to sneak into the corner of the end zone, and that was all the BC Lions needed to put it away.
That's all you really needed. Good football game. I liked it.
27-20, the final score in favor of the BC Lions. For Ronnie Lancaster and all of us here at BC
Play, where he makes the fake, as you see Ransom makes the fake to the running back and just pitches it out. There's really no option on that. He just had the intent of going down the line and then pitching it back to Johns.
The lane down the 25-yard line of the Riders. Chris Siegler comes over to make the tackle. His 3rd field goal of the game and puts the Montreal Alouettes in front of the Ottawa Rough Riders by 1 with 8 minutes and 54 seconds remaining till halftime.
He gets back there, he sets, plants, makes his read, and comes back to a secondary receiver who is the running back out of the backfield.
Lamont Jeffers in there to make the stop, but the penalty is against the Ottawa Rough Riders. Holding is the call. despair. So the Riders go back on top of the Alouettes by a score of 11-9 in what has become a place kickers duel here at Lansdowne Park.
Well, I figure with two inexperienced quarterbacks in the game that there might not be a whole lot of touchdowns and points scored, but it would be a good game because they have the capabilities of moving up the field. But when it gets tough, you get tough down going into the other team's end zone, and the defense is tightened up, and there takes a little more experience and time to learn how to beat that and attack that properly.
I should mention that before the game, you did say it would be low scoring.
Yep.
His longest so far this season has been a 50-yarder, so this might be out of his range. And it's wide. Phil Jones in the end zone, trying to make up his mind. Do I keep it? Do I concede the single point? Finally, elects to concede the single point.
Oh, he was a little close that time in stepping out of the end zone. His foot was right on the line, but they conceded the single point and to be able to get the ball in better field position. I think that's a good move to keep that ball in there and only give up a single, rather be caught down there behind your own 10-yard line, where if a turnover or something occurs, they can get an easy score.
We'll have highlights on Week 4, the Stars of the Week, a Commonwealth Games report, and a special pregame tribute to Lauren Woods. Down inside the 20-yard line on the fake punt. There was a fumble on the play. The Ottawa Rough Riders are indicating they have possession. The Alouettes say they've got it. Terry Urban scooped it up for the Alouettes. The official is indicating it was indeed a fumble. So the fake punt worked, but they forgot to hang on to the ball.
Well, that was just a good play. Sometimes the element of surprise plays a big part of the game, and this was a surprise to the Montreal Alouettes. Just a direct snap to Robert Reed. Good blocking at the point of attack. All of his men are there making their key blocks as he gets upfield. But unfortunately for him, he couldn't hold on the ball.
Back to the live action. Kerry Taylor with the ball for Montreal. Gets to the 30-yard line. Steve Harrison in to make the turn at Lansdowne Park, and it has been a defensive struggle between the Montreal Alouettes and the Ottawa Rough Riders. The Riders head into the dressing room with a 1-point lead, 11-10. Now let's go to Don Martin at CFL Control.
All right, Steve, thanks very much. May not be the most scintillating offensive display we've seen so far this season, but at least it's close. Coming up at halftime tonight, we'll take a look at the Week 4 highlights of the CFL along with the Stars of the Week. We'll have a Commonwealth Games report. Ottawa leading Montreal 11-10 at the half. Quarterly report time for many teams in the CFL. The West looks strong again, taking all 4 from the East last weekend as we have a look at the highlights of Week 4. The lights went out in Toronto, leaving the Argos offense in the dark. The Riders' Bobby Johnson takes it up the middle, 24 yards for the game's only touchdown as Saskatchewan wins a second straight. Back-to-back losses for Toronto as the Riders take it 21-14. At Commonwealth Stadium, Edmonton leads by 4 when Matt Dunnigan hooks up with Brian Kelly for the touchdown as the Eskimos break it open against Ottawa. Just a few plays later, Dunnigan gets it to Stuart Hill as Edmonton moves to 4-0 on the season, handing the Riders a second straight loss. 49-39 Eskimos the final. In Calgary, it's tied at 10 in the first half at McMahon Stadium when Hamilton's quarterback, Ken Hobart, goes to Rocky DiPietro in the end zone. The first touchdown through the air for the Ticats this season. But late in the game, the Stampeders' Rick Johnson finds James Harris in the end zone as Calgary moves in front 23-21, and time expires too quickly, according to Hamilton coach Al Bruno, who has filed an official protest with the league. And in BC, the Lions take advantage of a late Montreal turnover. Roy DeWalt to Jan Carinci for the winning points in the fourth quarter as the Lions keep the Alouettes winless. 27-20 BC the final to complete Week 4 in the CFL. And of course, we're still awaiting word on the protest filed by Al Bruno. Commissioner Doug Mitchell will rule within a week to 10 days, but it's not likely that will succeed. There was, however, no doubt about the Stars of the Week. The Stampeders win again last week, and they take 2 of the 3 stars. A critical home field win by Calgary and a near upset of the BC Lions by Montreal produces the Stars of Week 4 in the CFL. Defensive star honors go to linebacker Anthony Woodson, number 96 of the Stampeders. Blitzing Ticat quarterback Ken Hobart throughout the game, his constant pressure earned him 1 sack and an armful of tackles as Calgary held on to win it 23-21. Brett Williams, number 71 of the Alouettes, earned the lineman star for his outstanding play against the defending Grey Cup champions. His 4 sacks and solid 60-minute effort highlighted Montreal's strong showing at BC Plates. Offensive Star of the Week awarded to quarterback Rick Johnson of the Calgary Stampeders. He completed 17 passes for 240 yards and 2 touchdowns, leading Calgary to their 2nd consecutive victory over Hamilton. So it's Woodson, Williams, and Johnson, stars of Week 4 in the CFL. That's the story domestically. Hopefully the final.
Thank you, Don. It's still halftime here at Lansdowne Park as we take the CompuStats from the first half of play. You'll notice first downs. Montreal have 9, the Riders 3, yet in net offense, the Riders have 142 compared to 140 for Montreal. 68 of those Rider yards coming from that long touchdown run from Lester Brown. And in the turnover department, the Riders have 2, Montreal have 1. The score at halftime is Ottawa 11, Montreal 10. CFL 86 on CBC returns in just a moment.
And once he gets into that secondary, there's very little they can do to catch him. And Lester Brown takes it all the way for a 63-yard touchdown.
Tremendous acceleration and speed on the part of Lester Brown, and hitting that hole and then carrying on through into the end zone.
The rest of the game has probably been a defensive struggle with a lot of good hits. As you see here, Alan Reed is going to run through the hole, break clear free, and he's hit by number 34, Harrison, Steve Harrison, and the ball is fumbled, and Chris Ziegler makes the recovery. Again, you see a surprise play by the Ottawa Rough Riders. Instead of snapping to the kicker, they snap to Reed, Robert Reed, who's carrying the ball through the hole. He breaks the tackle in hopes to get down for a touchdown, but in the end, as you'll see here, he's tackled, and the fumble recovery is being made by Terry Irvin. There's a lot of action during the game in the defenses and a lot of big plays as far as fumbles.
And we should have expected that in this game, because there are 2 rookie quarterbacks at the helm for both the Ottawa Rough Riders and the Montreal Alouettes. So perhaps it's not too surprising that the offenses aren't dominating and the defenses are. Just before game time here at Lansdowne Park, we witnessed a very moving ceremony. The CFL and the CFL officials got together to honor one of the all-time great CFL officials, Lorne Woods. There you see Mrs. Woods and CFL Commissioner Doug Mitchell, along with Bob Bryan of Ottawa, as CFL officials. They are presenting a plaque to CFL Commissioner Doug Mitchell in honor of the late Lorne Woods, who died of a heart attack at the age of 48. He refereed and officiated in over 300 games in the CFL, including 8 Grey Cups. And this is the plaque that will hang here at Lansdowne Park in memory of Lorne Woods, a dedicated professional whose friendship and leadership was and will be an inspiration to us all. Those words from the CFL officials. And there is CFL Commissioner Doug Mitchell presenting a beautiful photograph to the wife of Lorne Woods. And here's a picture of Lorne Woods himself in action. Over 300 games in the CFL. A good friend of the league. He'll be missed. Lorne Woods. And we're back to the action. The second half just underway here at Lansdowne Park. That's Reggie Butts at the first time he gets his hands on the ball, goes long to Lewis.
Well, the point is, J.C. Watts has been sitting on that sideline. He gets a chance to read and has the opportunity to come in. You sit on that bench and you want to play and do everything, and you see this play coming up as he's throwing deep to Lewis.
A 48-yard pickup on the play. And he beat a pretty good deep back in the person of Irvin. 1st and 10 for the Riders. Watts completes to the big fullback, Reed. Reed pulls his way down inside the 15-yard line.
The one thing about J.C. Watts, he's been on the sideline. He's been able to pick up a lot of different things that were happening during the game. And from that, he can take advantage of it. Also, he's very motivated by the fact that he was put on the bench. And that has a way of inspiring you to hopefully that you'll come out with big things during the game.
I know it did me when I was forced to the backup position. I know it did you when you were backup, which wasn't very often in your career. 2nd and 4 to go for the Riders. The ball on the 14-yard line of the Alouettes. 3rd quarter action just underway. Lester Brown dropped for a loss. Good defensive play by David Daniels, getting into the Riders' backfield and dropping Brown for a loss.
concerned Joe Moss on the Riders bench. Has to be. Touchdown, Ottawa Rough Riders! It was actually tipped by Darryl Boyer right into the arms of Lewis.
Deep pattern by Mark Lewis. We've been talking all night about hitting those inside receivers, and all of a sudden you've got to come up and hit those outside receivers deep, because you know that the secondary is beginning to come up and play tight, and that's exactly what J.C. Watts did in hitting Mark Lewis deep down the field. And one of the interesting parts about that situation, Peter Vanderboss came up and just hugged J.C. Watts after he completed the pass, because that offensive line knows the type of heat that this crowd has been putting on J.C. Watts.
What a pick-me-up that will be for number 6, J.C. Watts, who surely needed a confidence builder here at Lansdowne Park, and he may have got one with that strike to Mark Lewis. And now Dean Dorsey will attempt the point after for the...
Good coverage and knocks the ball away, but it just happens to bounce up in the air, and Mark Lewis picked it up. Okay, you had a situation where you had 2 rookies involved in one-on-one coverage, and the winner this time was Reggie Butts over Steve Benjamin. As you take a look at the low angle shot of this, J.C. Watts doesn't have much time, and he just throws it quick and deep to the outside for the receiver to fight for it and bring it in, and Reggie Butts did just that for the touchdown.
8 plays, 75 yards, and it was capped by a 26-yard scoring pass from J.C. Watts to Reggie Butts. And Dean Dorsey is good on the convert attempt. So the Ottawa Rough Riders increase their lead to 28-15 over the Montreal Alouettes with 2 minutes and 59 seconds remaining to play. In front, 28-15. Pass over the middle, incomplete. 22, Montreal trail by 6. Lots of time remaining to play. 2 minutes and 7 seconds.
Did we say it's going to be a low-scoring game in the beginning?
I believe you said that, sir. I wasn't going to mention that. I wasn't going to bring it up.
Well, you know, well, it was close. We knew that these teams were relatively even in their abilities. And we're seeing this tonight in the scoring and the defensive play. As you take a look, as Johns, as he's running up the middle, just look, puts his head down and get as many yards as you can when you get down in that area. When the linemen are in there trying to get as many yards as they can for the offensive side, and the defensive linemen are trying to stop that surge of that offensive line.
We have another Montreal player down on the field as we look at 2 members of the Alouettes on the bench. There's Robert Lubick. This is not the first time he's been shaken up in this contest. And again, it could be a question of the heat. It is very hot, very muggy here in the Ottawa area tonight. And it could be taking its toll. But again, Lubick is able to come off the field under his own steam, which is always a good sign for any ball player.
Be alert, be alert, be alert.
James Watt, J.C. Watt. What a game he has had for the Ottawa Rough Riders. As Lubick is finally at the bench. Now, do we get the short kickoff from Roy Kurtz? They're going long. Lester Brown at the 15. He's at the 20. He's at the 30. It is number 76 of the Ottawa Rough Riders, Lloyd Lewis, and he too will receive a Canadian Mint 1-ounce gold coin. The Carling O'Keefe defensive game star, Lloyd Lewis. And it was tough to pick a defensive game star tonight, but we did settle on number 76, Lloyd Lewis, who made in a very long night for the Alouettes quarterback, Brian Ransom. 2nd and 10 situation. No good. Mark Lewis was out of bounds when he made the reception. So that'll bring on a punting situation for the Ottawa Rough Riders with 1 minute and 51 seconds remaining to play.
Well, they sure didn't use up enough time in that situation.
The executive producer of tonight's telecast, John Spaulding. James Hood! Touchdown, Montreal! Is Beckman happy?
Gary Durchuk has got to be very happy, but there's still lots of time in the clock. all of a sudden we've gone through 3 quarters with nothing happening. In the last 4 or 5 minutes, a lot of touchdowns have been scored. And that man, James Hood, comes up with a big play in the last 2 minutes of the game, as he broke the tackle and just ran to the outside. He has good speed, and you've got to stay behind those receivers in that situation. We saw it earlier in the year in Calgary-Edmonton game.
Boy, we talked about the converts being automatic. That was a big one from Roy Kurtz. It is good. It puts Montreal on top of the Ottawa Roughriders, 29-28. And that man has reason to celebrate. He has put Montreal on top and a minute and 23 seconds away from their first victory of the 1986 season.
Well, J.C. Watt still has enough time with a minute and 23 seconds. He can move that ball up in the field goal range. This game is not over yet. We maybe thought before it was over in favor of Ottawa, and now Montreal has come back with the 7 points. And to take the lead, J.C. Watt has enough time to move it down in field goal position.
Well, we have seen J.C. Watts work miracles in the past as he got one left in his bag of tricks. That might be the catch word of the night for the Montreal Alouettes. Never give up. They never did. And how does that man feel? You had victory in your grasp.
Well, Joe is very upset. I know, as any coach is, in that situation. You don't want that to happen. And you want to keep your secondary back in a position where they're going to make the short tackle in front of him. They let him catch the ball in front of him, and they missed the tackle. He broke loose and ran all the way.
There aren't too many fans leaving Lansdowne Park at this stage, I can tell you that. Minute 23 to play. Lester Brown at the 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. He gets out to the 45-yard line. So J.C. Watts and the Ryder offense will again have good field position from which to work.
Big systems of plays that will be coming up by J.C. Watts here. He's got to make the right calls to get the players out of bounds. If they get caught in bounds, they have to get back to the line of scrimmage, run their 2-minute offense, get the play called, and move it up the field.
That was a 59-yard kick and a 29-yard return from Lester Brown. And again, we have another member of the Montreal Alouettes down on the field, and there you see the time, a minute and 18. Lots of time for an experienced quarterback like J.C. Watts in which to move the ball.
Well, what you do in this situation, you get in the huddle, and you may call 2 plays. A play if he completes it to come back off of, or if it goes incomplete, you know that you can always come back to the huddle. You'll see J.C. line up on the line of scrimmage, and they'll call a system called fire, as we saw them practicing yesterday. Fire means get up on the line of scrimmage, and J.C. Watts will call a play out from one side to give the receivers play. He may call 542, give them the patterns on one side and the patterns on the other side. So listen for that as you watch the game on the TV from a fan standpoint.
Daryl Moyer is the injured player on the field for the Alouettes, and I would think that if anybody is elated over the quick turnaround of the Alouettes, it has to be Daryl Moyer, who was burned on that touchdown pass to Mark Lewis.
Well, I think that the opportunity for that whole team to come back like this is important for the Montreal Alouettes. I think last week they played well, and they never give up, and this helps unite a young football team. The defensive secondary is young back there, and they're going to make some mistakes. And to come back, and if they can win this game, it will go a long way to boosting them.
A minute and 18 to play. First and 10 Riders from their own 45-yard line. J.C. completes to Hudson. Hudson inside Montreal territory. He takes it down to the 50-yard line.
Hudson did a good job just getting in the hole, get the ball, get as many yards as you can, put it away, and take what they give you.
Vindication for J.C. Watts. A 15-yard gain. First and 10 Riders from the 50-yard line of the Alouettes. J.C. Watts under pressure. He got that away just in the nick of time. Steve Rocky was on top of him.
Steve Rocky had a clear shot at him, and J.C. turned around just enough to catch a glimpse of it and get rid of the ball. As you'll see the contact being made just as J.C. is letting the ball go, and he has those rib protectors there, which helped him in this situation.
57 seconds remaining in the fourth quarter. Montreal leading 29-28. Second and 10 for the Riders. J.C. Watts is going to run it. J.C. Watts down to the 43-yard line with 51 seconds to play. Remember, they've got Dean Dorsey, whose longest field goal of the season is 45 yards.
Well, JC draws back here, didn't find a receiver. He thought he could pick up more yards than he did here, but the hole just was closed up by William Mitchell in that situation.
Well, they're gambling. They've got to gamble. 3rd and 4. JC completes to Hudson, and he should have the first down. It's very, very close. Depending on where they mark it, the Alouettes are indicating no. The Riders are saying yes. We'll have to wait and see. The Riders and their fans are holding their breath. Here's the measurement. They did not have enough. The Alouettes take over with 32 seconds remaining on the scoreboard clock and a 1-point lead, 29-28. You've got to feel good for that man who has worked so hard with the Alouettes in trying to come up with their first win of the season.
Well, you've got to feel good for Gary Durchuk. He's come very long way in preparing this young team, and they played very well the last 2 weeks, and they've been 0-3, and they needed a victory here tonight.
So now Brian Ransom and the Alouettes simply have to kill off some time, and that's the reason Ransom is rolling out way out to his right. 25 seconds now remaining to play. And I guess it's, again, easy for us to second guess, but why didn't the Riders go for the field goal?
Well, there's a slight breeze blowing into his face, and that would have been about a 52 or 3-yard field goal for him to take at that time, and that would have been the problem. What they should have considered, I think, is trying to use Ken Clark on a punting situation to punt for the one and at least get the tie.
Okay, Coach. We have a timeout down on the field with 25 seconds remaining on the scoreboard clock. It's Montreal 29, Ottawa 28.
5 seconds off the clock.
And Durchuk is calling for 5 seconds off the clock. Let's hope we don't have a repeat of the situation in Calgary. Now Bruno will tell us all about that.
Okay, if you listen to Gary, what he's telling Ransom to do is, he said, I want you to run 5 seconds off the clock. Get out of there. Run 5 or 6 seconds off. Listen.
All the way down to 0 and just kneel the ball. Okay? But you got to watch the 20 seconds, so you got to get the play off within 20 seconds or it's delay a game. That's the last play. That'll be on the last play. You need. You tell them, hey, tell them to hold in there now. You want you? Yeah, tell them trips. Tell the guys to hold. They won't take the penalty. You want line 900? Yes, and you keep the ball. Tell them to hold.
Okay, what he wants to do here is to have Ransom run the clock down at least to the 19-second level. That way the clock won't stop. Then the next time on the snap of the series, run the clock out completely so that there's no time showing and run the play.
That's great stuff. We heard Gary Durchuk talk to his quarterback, Brian Ransom. 2nd and long yardage. Ransom wants to eat up some time, and he gets it down under 20 seconds, 19 seconds to play.
Now, basically, what he wants to do is just put himself in a position where he can see the clock and make sure that he gets the ball snapped at the 0 mark, and the game's over with.
What a tremendous amount of pressure for the young quarterback, Brian Ransom. He has performed exceptionally well, except for a brief stint in this game when Joe Barnes went in to relieve him. Barnes also did well. Okay, now the situation, the clock is running. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. The snap of the ball. The game is over. The Montreal Alouettes have defeated the Ottawa Rough Riders 29-28. And for Gary Durchuk and the Alouettes, it's their first win of the season. A 29-28 victory for the Alouettes. it went right down to the wire, folks. The Montreal Alouettes chalking up their first win of the young CFL season with a 29-28 victory over the Ottawa Rough Riders. Well, let's take a look at the CompuStats, and as you might imagine, they are fairly close. Total offense for the Montreal Alouettes, 386 yards compared to 346 for the Ottawa Rough Riders. It was a very entertaining game here at Lansdowne Park tonight. Chuck, I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Well, it was a good game. The first part of the game was slow, just a defensive struggle, and the last quarter, and the last part of the last quarter, the game got really exciting with a lot of touchdowns being scored.
And you got to feel good for Gary Durchik.
Definitely. I think for Gary Durchik and the Montreal Alouettes, who have been struggling and played very well last week, they needed to come up with a win tonight, and they did it in an exciting fashion.
And you got to kind of hope that that puts some people in the ballpark in Montreal with an exciting ball club like they've got now.
Well, I think so, and I'm sure it will.
Okay, the final score once again here at Lansdowne Park in Ottawa saw the Alouettes pick up their first win of the season, defeating the Ottawa Rough Riders 29-28. Now back to Don Martin at CFL Control. Don?
Thanks, Stephen. You're right. If any team in the league needed a win, it was Montreal as they struggle for survival at the sometimes cavernous Olympic Stadium when there are only 10,000 fans there. All right, the Eastern standings have tightened up. Toronto Argonauts back into first place. They're 2-2, facing Saskatchewan on the weekend. The Rough Riders fall to 2-3, still in second place. Hamilton is in against 29. The Ottawa Rough Riders 28. And our next game on CBC, Ottawa Rough Riders against Saskatchewan, Monday, August 4th.
Excitement on CBC television. Ottawa plays in Saskatchewan. Catch it all. CFL 86, Best on the Box, live Monday afternoon.
Toronto Argonauts are in Saskatchewan, both clubs with 2-2 records on the season heading into tonight's game. The Argos with a victory could take over sole possession of first place in the East.
We pick it up just about 4 minutes into the first quarter. It's scoreless when Bernard Quarles goes back to pass for Saskatchewan, and he finds Derek Zeno in the end zone, who beats Marcellus Green to the ball, capping a 74-yard drive, 7-0 for Saskatchewan. The Green Riders had their way with the Argo defense most of the first half. Here, Quarles hits Tony Dennis on a beautiful pass and run play. But Dennis, who was looking for 7, was caught by Nash, who knocked the ball out of his hands. It's picked up by Marcellus Green, who runs the ball out of trouble, stopping what could have been another 7 points for the Riders. One thing Argos could not afford in this game was an injury to Conrad Holloway. They couldn't get anything going in the first half. Holloway completes this pass, but wouldn't you know, Holloway goes down with another injury. The Argos cannot afford that. This is Holloway's first game back after being out for a couple of weeks. With Saskatchewan leading 11-1 last play of the first half, Lance Schomek hits for his 14th consecutive field goal. Saskatchewan led the Argos 11-4 at halftime. And in the third quarter, lucky for Argo fans, Conrad Holloway not injured that badly. He returns to action as he hits Craig Ellis over the middle for the touchdown with the conversion. The Argos and Saskatchewan Rough Riders all tied up at 11. To start the fourth quarter, the Riders added a field goal to make it 14-11, but then the Argos came back on this beautiful pass from Conrad Holloway deep into the end zone to Paul Pearson. With the extra point, the Argos out in front of Saskatchewan in the fourth quarter, 18-14.
And that game is now final. The Argos have won it over Saskatchewan. Final score 27-17. So the Argos are now 3-2 on the season and have sole possession of first place in the East Division.
Deep in the CFL West Division last night with a 1-point win over the Calgary Stampeders. Kicker Louis Pasaglia had the Lions leading 6-1 midway through the second quarter.
Several minutes later, Johnson and former BC receiver Jamie Harris combined for this 51-yard pass and run. Harris steps into the end zone. The Stamps step into a 10-4 lead. But it's short-lived. Johnson's throw is intercepted. Darnell Clash makes the big play. He sprints 55 yards for the Lions' first major score. It's an easy touchdown. The Lions will get a late field goal, so they lead 14-10 at the half. The Stamps grab the lead in the third quarter. Johnson and Tauber combined for 28 yards. Nice reception here. So the ball is at the Lions' 33. Now, 2 plays later, the Stamps score. Johnson passes to Ray Alexander in the Lions' end zone. Darnell Clash and Larry Crawford provide close coverage. But Alexander gets the ball. 17-15 Calgary. Now, late in the final quarter, Stamps still lead. The Lions in punt formation. It's 3rd and 20. Louis Pasaglia decides to pass the ball. It's complete. And the Lions move into Calgary territory with a first down. That sets up this 26-yard Pasaglia field goal. And BC grabs the lead 18-17, just 35 seconds left. Then Stamps quarterback Rick Johnson passes 31 yards to Emmanuel Talbert. He was outstanding tonight, gained nearly 200 yards passing. So the Stamps are in field goal range, but with just seconds left, the BC Lions pick off Johnson's pass, and the Lions win. Final score, 18-17.
Two games in the CFL tonight. The Toronto Argonauts and the Edmonton Eskimos are still playing. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers have beaten the Alouettes 37-10 in Montreal. Let's have a look at a couple of the highlights in that Toronto-Edmonton game. 1-1 in the second quarter. And back goes the quarterback for the Edmonton Eskimos. It is intercepted by the Toronto Argonauts and moved upfield, and then Condredge Holloway will take over. Here's a nice pass coming up from Holloway down to the 4-yard line of the Edmonton Eskimos, and in just a second we'll see the touchdown. Holloway again over to Smith. It is 8-1 in the second quarter, and we have the score at the half now. It is 12-6. The Toronto Argonauts are leading the Edmonton Eskimos, and we've
catch it all.
Riders, Ottawa representing the CFL East against Saskatchewan from the CFL West. In their last outing, the Eastern Riders lost a thriller to Montreal. Ottawa appeared to have the game won with plays like this from the league's second-best rusher, Lester Brown. Brown using his great speed to score his first touchdown of the season. Tom Burgess started the game at quarterback for the Ottawa Rough Riders, but J.C. Watts was brilliant in relief. Watts going long to Mark Lewis. The Riders and Lewis got a break and appeared to have the game locked up. The Alouettes mounted an unbelievable comeback in the final minutes and scored the winning touchdown when the rookie Brian Ransom found James Hood. Hood did the rest, and the Riders lost a game they thought they should have won. The Riders dropped to 2-3 on the season. Montreal win their first. Last week at Taylor Field, the Western Riders entertained the Argos. Saskatchewan's passing game was in high gear thanks to quarterback Bernard Quarles. The ex-Ottawa Rough Rider used his strong arm to find Tony Dennis, only to have the ball stripped by the Argos Nash and recovered by Marcellus Green. Same old story for the Riders, lots of yardage, but few results. But the results did come on this play when Quarles fired a perfect strike to Derek Zeno. The Argos won it when Condredge Holloway and Paul Pearson were absolutely perfect on this play. The Riders beat the Argos in the East, but they couldn't win at home. This afternoon, the two Riders, with more than just matching names, meet at Taylor Field.
Commentary team.
To Regina and the CFL's interlocking game between the two Riders. Working with me on this very warm afternoon at Taylor Field, Ronnie Lancaster. Ronnie, the head coach of the Ottawa Rough Riders, Joe Moss, has once again elected to go with Tom Burgess as his starting quarterback in place of the experienced J.C. Watts.
Well, we've had the same problem every time we've done an Ottawa game. There seems to be inconsistency at quarterback. It seems like Tom Burgess came off the bench in relief, and Edmonton did a great job, so he gets to start against Montreal. Now, he might have set 14 career records while in college, but the professional game's a little bit different. And against Montreal the other night, he only completed 6 passes, no touchdowns, 56 yards, and I think when he threw this interception, as Joe Moss has said, he'll not hesitate to change quarterbacks. So right away, out comes Burgess, in goes Watts. Watts has a great fourth quarter, 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, and they look like they're going to win the football game. But we turn around, and a few days later, who do we have at quarterback but Tom Burgess? So I don't think it matters who starts, it's who finishes.
One of the big problems for the Western Riders has been their inability to score. They've racked up a ton of yardage on offense, but they can't put the ball in the end zone.
Boy, they sure can't, and you're not going to win any football game scoring 85 points in 5 games. That breaks down to 17 points a game. That will get you beat 95% of the time. And when you give up 142, you're in a whole lot of trouble. So they're going to try to run and throw the ball.
Individually, a big plus for the Ottawa Rough Riders this afternoon against Saskatchewan will be the presence of Greg Marshall in the Ottawa lineup coming off an injury.
Well, their defense needs a boost right now. They've lost 3 in a row, and in those games, they've given up an average of 33 points a game. And in the last 2 games, 600 yards in passing. So they have got to get to the quarterback. And for the last 3 or 4 years, that man, Greg Marshall, has been the leader of that front 4. So if they can get the pressure on the Saskatchewan quarterback, Bernard Quarles, then guys like Ricky Barton can come up and put good hits on him. He has been the best hitter, maybe, in the secondary for Ottawa for the last 3 or 4 years. So if he can come up and hit them and they get the pressure, they can cause problems.
And if the Saskatchewan Roughriders are going to score points, they have got to get some big games from key people in their receiving corps.
Well, they want to run the football a little bit, but I really believe today Derek Zeno and Mike Elarms are going to be the key to the football game. Zeno last week caught a touchdown pass. That's a rarity. They've only had 3 touchdown passes in their 5 games. And then Mike Elarms at the other side, he's their second leading receiver. This guy has the ability to catch those short hook passes, curls, and outs, but he has the speed to go deep. And when you think big plays, you think deep. So I really believe today we're going to see Zeno and Elarms working on the Ottawa corners.
You mentioned the fact that the Ottawa Rough Riders have lost 3 games in a row. They can ill afford to lose 4 in a row because they don't want to get out of touch in the Eastern Division.
No, you know, I think with the new playoff structure this year, coaches have to look down the road and see what's going to happen down in the future. And you've got to win when you play. Every time you walk on the field, you've got to win because you don't want to have to make them up later.
Very quickly, I'm going to put you on the spot again. Who's going to win here this afternoon?
I think Saskatchewan's offense is going to come to life.
Okay, we're a few moments away from the opening kickoff here at Taylor Field. It's the Eastern Riders against the Western Riders. Both clubs going into this game with a 2-3 record. Right now, let's go to CFL Control and my World Cup colleague from Mexico, Chris Cuthbert.
Thank you, Steve, and welcome to CFL Control. Always interesting when these 2 teams meet because they have so much in common, not just their nickname and their record so far this year, but 12 players on the field this afternoon have played for both Rough Riders, and that doesn't include Jack Gotta and George Brancato, former Ottawa head coaches, now with Saskatchewan, or Joe Moss, the Eastern Rider head coach, once an assistant in Regina. And the Rider rivalry over the years almost even. Ottawa has won 16, Saskatchewan 14 of the 30 meetings between the Rough Riders. Here's how they stand so far in 1986. Ottawa in second in the East, 4 back of Toronto, 2 ahead of Hamilton and Montreal. While Saskatchewan is tied for 4th, they're 2 back of Winnipeg and with a game in hand on the Stampeders in the West. Coming up at halftime, highlights of the rest of the action in Week 6 and a profile of Ottawa wide receiver Mark Lewis. Steve and Ron will have CompuStats, video analysis, and the star of the first half. The Rough Riders almost set to kick off at Taylor Field. CFL 86 on CBC returns in a moment. This week against the Toronto Argonauts, a 7-point lead wasn't enough for Saskatchewan. They'll try to protect a 10-point cushion this afternoon in the second half against the Ottawa Rough Riders. Now, coming up at halftime, we'll have highlights of all of the action in Week 6 of the CFL, as well as a profile of Mark Lewis of the Ottawa Rough Riders. We'll have CompuStats, video analysis, and a chat with Jim Reed of the Rough Riders. CFL 86 on CBC continues in a moment. Saskatchewan leading Ottawa 16-6 at the half. Well, it may be a new week on the calendar, but it's the end of Week 6 in the CFL. Already Edmonton has lost its unbeaten streak to Toronto. Winnipeg exploded in Montreal. There's a new leader in the West, the BC Lions. The Lions had their hands full with the revamped Stampeders in Calgary. Rick Johnson, having a great year, passes 51 yards to former Lion Jamie Harris in the second quarter. Calgary leads 10-4. But Johnson's next pass went the other way. Darnell Clagg picks it off and roars 60 yards with the interception to give BC a 14-10 lead. But late in the third quarter, it's Johnson again to Emmanuel Tolbert. And then he throws 18 yards into the end zone. Ray Alexander with a great catch for his 6th touchdown. And Calgary leads the game. Key play of the game, 3rd and 20. Louis Bisaglia passes to Paul Nastasic to keep a Lions drive alive. 35 seconds left. Bisaglia hits the field goal, and the Lions beat the Stampeders 18-17. In Montreal, it was over early as Winnipeg was on a rampage. Willard Reeves, 2-yard plunge early. Tom Clements completes his first 10 passes. This a touchdown to Randy Baby. On the other side, Montreal had its problems. A fumble by Brian Ransom deep. And then Cal Murphy pulled out all of his big plays. Darrell Sampson on the reverse from Bob Cameron runs 21 yards. And Clements will complete quite a night for the Blue Bombers. A 9-yard touchdown pass to Joe Poplawski. Winnipeg beat Montreal 37-10. Friday night in Edmonton, quite a game, and Conrad Holloway, the 12-year veteran, was at his best. First quarter, he throws inside the 5, complete to Kirtland Thomas. And on the next play, into the end zone, 4 yards to Darrell Smith as the Argos open up a 12-6 first half lead.
The lead doesn't last long. Opening kickoff second half. That's Stephen Jones following the wedge perfectly. He goes 105 yards for the touchdown, and the Eskimos lead 13-12. It'd be a big third quarter for the Eskimos, who have their own trick plays. This one to Chris Johnstone keeps an Eskimo drive alive. And then Matt Dunnigan goes to work throwing into the end zone. That's Chris Skinner in behind the defense. And the Eskimos open up a 20-12 lead, but they go for more. Skinner, this time on the ground, runs 10 yards, and it's a 15-point Eskimo lead. But the Argonauts would come back as Conrad Holloway goes deep. Darrell Smith is open, and he'll go 62 yards for his second touchdown of the game as the Argonauts move within a major score. Then it's Holloway going back again. This time he finds former Eskimo Chris Woods, and what a night he had against his former team. The game was tied. Then the Argonauts would get the break they were looking for. Dunnigan intercepted by David Marshall deep in Edmonton territory. And that sets up this touchdown by Craig Ellis. It looked like the Argos were on their way to a victory, but the Eskimos come right back. That's Dunnigan, play action. He has lots of time and finds Rick House in the end zone. The game is tied with just 27 seconds left. With overtime looming, Argos move into field goal range. Lance Chomick misses, but it goes for a single point, and the Argos win by 1. Coming up next, a second-generation CFLer, Ottawa's Mark Lewis.
CFL 86 on CBC continues in a moment.
Moments like these are the result of months of hard work and practice. As a professional athlete, I understand the value of Special Olympics programs for mentally handicapped people. These fitness, recreation, and sport training programs are designed to prepare mentally handicapped athletes for participation in regular community activities. Special Olympics programs deserve your support. Please contact your local chapter.
This message brought to you by the Canadian Football League.
Western Riders lead the Eastern Riders by 10 at the half. It's never easy following in the footsteps of a successful father, especially if that father is former Winnipeg Blue Bombers star running back Leo Lewis. But that hasn't bothered the newest addition to the Ottawa Rough Rider receiving corps.
His father was the Lincoln Locomotive, a CFL Hall of Famer. Leo Lewis influenced son Mark's football career and his decision to join Ottawa.
He was a great player, and I try to model myself after him. I always wanted to be a running back, and over the years, my size kind of took me out of that position.
Lewis Sr. advised Mark to accept an offer from the Riders over one from the NFL's Green Bay Packers. When he arrived at training camp, Mark was familiar with the league and felt at home in the Ottawa offense because of his experience in the USFL.
Mouse Davis coached the Denver Gold, and he, I guess, refined the run and shoot. And I learned a lot from him and his offensive coordinator, June Jones. Well, Ottawa's running the run and shoot, and it wasn't a real hard transition for me to come up here. I didn't have to learn plays. I didn't have to agonize over trying to memorize plays, so it's been really good.
And Lewis has been very good, as the Montreal Alouettes found out last week. Not as big as his father, the 26-year-old is just as fast, running the 40 in 4.45 seconds. That makes him a handful for opposing defenses, as his 22.5-yard reception average would indicate.
I've been taking growth pills, and they don't work. I've been eating, that doesn't work. You know, every team needs their small type guys, small, quick guys, and hopefully I'm contributing enough. You know, Reggie Butts is another one that does really well. Mark Burrows. We're all small, and that the run and shoot needs the small receivers, small, quick guys. My ambition is to maybe eventually own my own store, sporting goods store, clothing store, something of that sort. I'd like to play a few more years of football because I love it. I'm having fun, and I like Ottawa.
Mark Lewis living up to the great Lewis name in the CFL.
And just an update on the rest of the Lewis family. Leo Lewis Jr., you remember, played for the Calgary Stampeders. He's now entering his third year with the Minnesota Vikings of the NFL. And Leo Lewis Sr., well, he is teaching and coaching women's basketball at his old college in Columbia, Missouri. Now let's go back to the ballpark and rejoin Stephen Rock.
Thank you, Chris. It's halftime here at Taylor Field in Regina. The Saskatchewan Roughriders, much to the delight of the hometown fans here in Regina, have a 16-6 lead over the Ottawa Roughriders. Now let's take a look at the CompuStats. You can see it was fairly even in the rushing department, but where the Saskatchewan Roughriders have the big edge is in passing. 162 yards to only 70 for the Ottawa Roughriders in the passing of J.C. Watts and Tom Burgess. And the big story for my money in that first half of play was the passing of Bernard Quarles. Here, the Roughriders are 1st and 10 from their own 3-yard line late in the second quarter. Now, Quarles goes long to Mike Elarms, who is making a long run down the right sidelines, and Bernard Quarles is right on the money with that pass to Elarms, and that helped to generate a sizable amount of the passing yardage that the Saskatchewan Roughriders were able to pick up in the first half. And in total yardage, it is Saskatchewan 239 compared to only 131 yards for the Ottawa Roughriders. Now, Jack Goda came into this game saying that he knew his club could generate a lot of total yardage. His big problem was putting points into the end zone. Well, they have done that rather successfully here at Taylor Field this afternoon. They lead the Ottawa Roughriders 16-6. We'll be back with more from Taylor Field in just a moment. It's halftime, 16-6 in favor of the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Jocko was talking about wanting to put some points on the scoreboard, and his club came up with the only touchdown in the first half.
Well, he sure did. We want to show you something unique about this touchdown that Bobby Johnson scored. We take a look. You see the center, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people on this side to get the Ottawa defense to shift. Now, if we'll just start it up and move it just a minute, and we'll stop it right here. Now we see Neil Quilter, the guard, Roger Aldag, the guard, and this right here on the end blocker is David Conrad. Denny Ferdinand will block out on Lamont Meacham, and Bobby Johnson will put this thing into the end zone. That's a well-run football play.
Well, down on the sidelines right now from the Ottawa Roughriders, we've got Jim Reed. Jim, the big play for the Ottawa Roughriders on the ground in that first half was the draw. Is that something you've been working on?
Well, we haven't run it for a few weeks. I think with the rush that they're getting on us, we have to come back to it and run it a bit more. With the fullback being the only back staying in the backfield in this offense, we do have to run that play. So I think you'll see some more of it in the second half.
Jim, does it make any difference to this Ottawa Roughrider offense who plays quarterback, J.C. or Tom?
Well, I think both of them are capable of playing, and both of them have a wee bit different style, but not that much. I don't think to the players it matters. We've been stuck in a one-quarterback situation for a long time in Ottawa, and I think it's great that we have other people we can put in. I think it'll help our football club.
Jim, thanks for talking to us. Good luck to you and the Ottawa Roughriders in the second half.
Thanks,
and there's Joe Moss making his way across to the Ottawa Roughrider bench. They trail 16-6 as the second half is about to get underway here at Taylor Field.
Well, let's see what happens. It's going to be an interesting third quarter. J.C. Watts should feel at home now. And really, when you said the rushing yardage was about even, outside of Reed's run, most of the yardage was J.C. Watts himself. A little stretching on the sidelines. Looks like Ray Elgart.
Football news from south of the border.
Field level here in Taylor Field as the frustration of the Ottawa Roughriders begins to show.
Well,
boys will be boys.
Well, it's a little hot.
But I've said it many times, with that much gear on, there's very little sense in fighting in the CFL. The fans here at Taylor Field very appreciative of the job the Saskatchewan Roughriders have done against the Ottawa Roughriders this afternoon.
Well, the referees have to sort this mess out. They're having a little discussion. See if anybody gets thrown out of the ball game. I would think so.
I would think so, too.
Yes,
I think if you're going to fight, you pay the price.
Yeah, that's one thing about it. football, you don't get a second chance. You get caught for fighting, it's bye-bye. Well, he's putting the flag in his pocket, or the card. I was waiting to see what he was going to do. He starts writing down numbers. We'll see. All right, referee Lazarick, what's up?
Disqualification number 76 Ottawa. Unnecessary roughness number 68 Saskatchewan. Your first down Ottawa.
Lloyd Lewis, I think, went out. Skolder got called for unnecessary roughness, but I don't think he got thrown out of the football game. Well, Lloyd Lewis will get a letter from the commissioner.
And Lloyd Lewis gets to the showers first, turn on the cold water, and cool off. There's Lewis, who played another strong game for the Ottawa Rough Riders. He's a little disappointed, a little frustrated. 22 seconds remaining to play in the ball game. The Ottawa Rough Riders have the ball. First and 10 at their own 21-yard line. They trail 33-14. Let's see what J.C. Watts can do. He drops deep, trying to buy some time. He's under pressure. Gets away from the would-be tacklers at the 30-yard line. 35, still on his feet. Gets to the 40 and up to the 43-yard line before Fran McDermott and Al Johns combined to bring the Ottawa quarterback down, but that burned up 12 seconds on the clock. There's only 10 seconds remaining to play in the ball game.
Yeah, well, today we've had the run and shoot offense has been mostly run. J.C. Watts has probably been the leading ground gainer, and he's done it by running with a football, but they haven't moved the ball consistently through the air, which is what they have to do with that offense. Last play coming up.
This should be the last play. There's no time remaining on the scoreboard clock. J.C. Watts under pressure. Nobody downfield is open. And J.C. Watts is finally brought down. The game is over. The Saskatchewan Roughriders have defeated the Roughriders from the Eastern Division by a score of 33-14. So Saskatchewan run their record to 3-3. For the Ottawa Roughriders, they dropped to 2-4. And Ronnie, like you said, it was just simply a case of the offense of Joe Moss. The run and shoot offense was all run and not enough pass.
No, it sure wasn't. You know, the funny thing about it now, both of these teams are going to prepare for the BC Lions. Saskatchewan will play them this Saturday. Ottawa gets the bye, and then they get ready to play them at Lansdowne Park in their next game. So not too long a rest for Saskatchewan, but they got to go to the Dome Saturday night. That'll be a tough one.
That should be a very entertaining game for fans in BC as we look at the CompuStats. And of course, with the score 33-14, they would favor the Saskatchewan Roughriders. 24 first downs to 18. Total rushing 179 to 140. But there's the difference in the passing offense of the Saskatchewan Roughriders. 307 yards to 152 for Ottawa. 465 total for the Jolly Green Riders. 260 for the Ottawa Roughriders. There were 2 turnovers in the game, and penalties really were not that big a factor as the Saskatchewan Roughriders defeat the Ottawa Roughriders 33-14 here at Taylor Field this afternoon. And we understand that Jack Goda is down on the sideline. Congratulations, Coach, on a win.
Well, that was a good one. It's Saskatchewan Day here. Nobody could be happier than myself, I guess. But anyway, we needed it from a team standpoint. In other words, we lost a couple of games that maybe we blew here in the last couple of home games. And from that standpoint, you're grabbing and grabbing, trying to get up to 500 and hang in the race. And I think this gets us back up there anyway.
Jack, if we could get you to push your hat back a bit, we could see your smiling eyes. We know you're smiling, but we can't see those twinkling eyes.
Yeah, you got that right.
You wanted to get the ball to the wide receivers today. I thought you got it to Elam's a lot, but Ray Elgard finally came up with a big game for you.
Yeah, Ray is so tough in there, hey, Ronnie, and then right near the end of the ball game, and still at a critical stage in the game, that he got dinged a little bit. We brought Mike McTagg in there, and you can see that Mike McTagg certainly is capable of playing for anybody.
When did you put that little wrinkle in with the unbalanced line toss to Bobby Johnson? It worked so well for the touchdown.
We had that in early in the week. We've had it in before. We just felt that sometimes you got to show things at different times.
Well, it went well today.
Yeah, it was good for us.
Jocko, you got to be pleased with the job that Joe Paupau did coming on in relief of Bernard Quarles.
Right. You know, we use the word, maybe we overwork the word tandem. We'd like to play two quarterbacks a lot. In fact, I'll make the statement right now, unless there's somebody gets hurt or hit by lightning in the next couple of days, that Bernard will start the game out at the Dome, you know, and certainly Paul is still the ace of our pitching staff. And I think when you use a couple of guys, and I think that you get a rest, and I think you get a contrasting style of play, I think it's best for our club.
Jocko, congratulations to you and the Riders. Thank you very much for talking to us.
We needed that.
The final score here at Taylor Field in Regina this afternoon, 33-14 in favor of the hometown Saskatchewan Roughriders. Game stars, Ray Elgard and Billy Jackson. Ray Elgard selected offensive game star. Ray, congratulations.
Thank you. Ray, coming in today, you only had 10 catches. Was it bothering you? Did it bother you any?
Yeah, it bothered me a little bit, but I'm not too concerned about what I do. You know, the main thing is for the team to do well, and if we're doing that, then it doesn't really matter what I get.
No, I didn't mean personally, but over the last year, you were a very, very big part of that Saskatchewan passing game, as you were today. I think you had 140-some yards today, but what a day you had catching the football. It's got to make you feel good when things are going your way.
Yeah, it does. I feel a lot better about what happened today, although a couple of times I should have caught a couple more balls that I dropped.
Well, the main thing, you got that one across the field for the touchdown. I think that's your first one. That had to be a good one.
Yeah, it was. Felt great.
Well, we're going to take a look at it. Talk about it.
Okay, we had man coverage, and we're running a bootleg pattern. We just put this in this weekend. And, you know, I do a little waggle to the right-hand side and cut across the field left. And they're in man coverage, so 36 is just chasing me. And he just didn't get there in time. Joe threw a nice ball.
You've been working on the running game some. I thought Bobby Johnson, an offensive lineman, and you and Tony Dennis in particular made some key blocks on those tosses. That running game becoming big in your game plan?
Yeah, it really has. Our offensive line has always been good at opening up good holes for running backs. And if the receivers can help out and get a couple guys downfield, then we can turn those into big plays. And Bobby's done a real good job of finding those holes.
One final question to you, Ray. Does it make any difference whether it's Joe Pow or Quarles throwing the balls to you?
Oh, it matters not at all. You know, both of them put the ball right there, and that's all you can ask for.
Okay, congratulations to you, Ray Elgard, our Carling O'Keefe offensive game star. And now Billy Jackson, the defensive game star. Congratulations, Billy.
Thank you.
Billy, at no time today did it ever appear that you guys were concerned that Ottawa's offense was hurting you. Did you have that feeling on the field?
Oh, no, not really. We just want to go out there and play our defense. And we play our defense, we could be tough.
Well, you gave them some big plays, but you didn't give them to them back-to-back. You'd give them a big play and then shut them down. And that's a good way for a defense to play, isn't it?
Oh, yes. You know, they're going to get big plays in the game. The main thing is stop them from scoring big scores. And we did that today.
Billy, who gives you the most trouble as a defensive player? Is it in that Ottawa offense, is it J.C. Watts, or is it the other quarterback, Tom Burgess?
It's J.C. Watts because he do more scrambling than any other quarterback they have. And you have to watch J.C. If he goes right, you have to move with him. If he goes left, you have to move with him. So it could take a lot out of your linebacker.
Billy, congratulations to you as our Carling O'Keefe defensive game star, and congratulations to you, Ray Elgard, as our Carling O'Keefe offensive game star in your 33-14 win over the Ottawa Roughriders here at Taylor Field. Right now, we're going to CFL Control, where Chris Cuthbert is standing by with a guest. Chris?
All right, Steve, thank you. And, of course, the man with the straw hat, none other than the general manager of the Saskatchewan Roughriders, Bill Quinter. And, Bill, I know you're pleased with the effort today.
Well, Chris, I was. I thought that the offense came out and played well again, and we reached a little bit of consistency there, and the defense came in and did a good job other than J.C. Watts running around a few times, and he's going to do that.
News from south of the border today. The United States Football League, in case fans have not heard, have announced they've suspended play for the fall of 1986. They'll try to restart the league in the spring of 87, but have freed up their players. How does that news affect the Canadian Football League?
Well, it certainly offers an opportunity for those players to come up and take a shot at playing in the Canadian Football League. And all of us in the league have had our eye on several players, and we have a lot of interest in the quarterbacking down there. There's some of the quarterbacks that we think are top quality throwers and can move the ball for you. And there's some outstanding receivers. Of course, Joey Walters is still in Orlando. And we're very excited, and we feel that we're going to have an opportunity to help ourselves, and the other teams in the league are going to have an opportunity to bring in some players to help themselves.
So you expect a lot of traffic in the next few weeks?
Well, I think there'll be some. I don't think you'll see a big group coming in at any one team, but I think you're going to see some players coming out of that league. I know, talking to some of the other general managers, they've been in contact with some of the agents down there.
Thank you to Bill Quinter, the general manager of the Saskatchewan Roughriders, winners this afternoon over the Ottawa Roughriders by a score of 33-14, perhaps their best effort of the year. Now let's go back to Stephen Ryan.
Thank you, Chris, and I'd agree with that. It was indeed the best effort of the Saskatchewan Roughriders on the season.
Well, it sure was. And, you know, when things are going poorly, you need to get things turned around. And we talked in the pregame about they had not been able to put the ball in the end zone. And, you know, until you do that, it starts to bother you as a team. Today they were able to get the ball in the end zone. Elgar caught a pass. Bobby Johnson goes in for a couple. You know, you start to feel good about yourselves. And, you know, there's nothing like a win to get the pressure off.
And a win by Saskatchewan that puts a little pressure on Winnipeg in the CFL's Western Division. Both clubs now got 6 points. 2 points behind Edmonton, who trail BC by 2 points, so things are tight.
Gotta love it. That's the way it should be. Let's let them fight right down to the wire.
Okay, the Saskatchewan Roughriders, with their victory here this afternoon, go to 3-3. The Ottawa Roughriders drop to 2-4. Now let's go to CFL Control once again, and Chris Cuthbert. Chris?
60 solid minutes of football for the Saskatchewan Roughriders this afternoon, Stephen. A nice balance, just under 200 yards rushing and just over 300 yards passing for the Green Riders as they move into a tie for third place in the CFL West. Ottawa still in second in the East, but with a record of 2-4. We talked about similarities between these two teams. They have a common opponent next. Saskatchewan will play the BC Lions in Vancouver Saturday. Ottawa's next game on August the 15th against BC. Thanks for joining us. So long from Taylor Field in Regina. Ottawa 14. Our next games come to you Thursday. Either Edmonton and Montreal or Hamilton and Winnipeg. Check local listings for the time and game in your area.